Have you ever wondered who would win a fight between a Redead and a Cuckoo? Well, so have I. Today I'm proposing to solve the hypothetical situation of what happens when our feathered friend has had enough of the constant screaming by ranking enemies from the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time based on their various strengths and weaknesses. And I'm doing it all through the most glorious media known to humankind, Top Trumps. And at this point, if you have any idea what I'm talking about, congratulations, you're officially a 90s kid. Created in the 1970s and popularised by a revamp in the early 90s, Top Trumps was the game that had it all. Players would duel using a single deck of cards containing a set of around 30 different uniquely themed objects, such as cars, aircraft, books, even dinosaurs. Heck yeah, dinosaurs! The game reached such heights that there were sets for TV shows, films, football teams, and even a set for UK politicians. Yes, seriously. The cards themselves contained numerical data relevant to the type of deck being used, and the players went head to head to wager that their card had a higher stat than their opponent's. And if correct, they'd gain their opponent's card. But if lower, they'd lose their card and their opponent would gain control. Once a player ran out of cards, they were out of the game, and the winner was the last one standing. Sounds simple enough, right? Using this structure, we have the perfect foundation to create our own version of the game, giving each enemy in Ocarina of Time their own card, which we can then use to make them go toe-to-toe with one another. The tricky part is deciding what stats to give our combatants. Through hours of rigorous research, 5 categories have been carefully chosen to represent Link's foes in all their glory. Offense: how long it would take to open a jar of pickles, plus other less relevant facts like damage output, physical strength, and speed. Defense: armor, stamina, vitamin C levels, all the stuff that stops you from being taken down. Fear factor: on a scale of 1 to 100, how much you wouldn't want to meet this thing in a dark alley. Irksome foe: how annoying the enemy can be, whether it be slowing you down or wanting to talk to you about your vehicle's extended warranty. Iconicism: basically, nostalgia filter. With that decided, it's time to start assigning some scores. Now, a standard deck usually consists of 30 or so cards, and the total number of enemies is a whopping 82. So, bearing that in mind, we're going to split the enemies into 3 different decks. In today's video, we'll be looking at the Fairy Ocarina deck. 29 beasties centred around Link's childhood, each one terrifying enough to pull the blanket up over your head and wait for morning to come. Alright, let's get into it with our first card. Being the first enemy encountered in the game, the Deku Baba is the perfect place to start, both in this deck and the story itself. It doesn't pose too much of a threat to Link, but can prove a problem if proper care isn't shown towards this pragmatic plant. Offensively, the Deku Baba shows a good range advantage, being able to lunge forward and attack from a safe distance. However, this attack does leave it open for a counter-strike if it fails to land against its target, reflected by its lower defense score. Though intimidating to new adventurers, with careful preparation and well-timed dodges and attacks, it can be easily dispatched, and is really just an oversized houseplant. Though that green gas that it lets out is a little concerning. Iconicism gets a nice boost from it being the first enemy encountered. As they say, everybody remembers their first. The Withered Deku Baba is basically an earlier version of the Deku Baba, being unable to move or attack from its roots. It scores low in both its attack and defense, as it's probably harder to actually take damage from the immobile plant than it is not to, and it's likely to be knocked out by a gentle breeze. It's great for gathering sticks though. Fear factor and irksome foe do receive a slight boost over its non-withered counterpart, solely for the fact that if you don't deal with it quickly, you are faced with the endless chattering of the Deku Baba's lips, which would lead even the most sane of warriors to madness if exposed to it for too long. Skulltulas. A common sight inside the Deku Tree and various viney abodes of Hyrule, these small spiders can prove tricky to navigate, especially as they hurl themselves towards our hero at the slightest sign of movement. Their defense is pretty lacking, being vulnerable to projectiles, swords, and also tremors in the ground caused by a hammer. They do make up for this with their 0 to 60 dash attack, which can, quite literally, hurl climbers from a wall. Though they don't have much strength themselves, a drop from high up can be catastrophic for the knees, and also result in a lengthy climb back up to the top, bumping up their irksome rating just a little bit. Ultimately, with smart movements, Link can avoid detection if necessary. Its fear factor score doesn't allude to the fact that it's a spider, but it is just a little one. This is a not so little one. Skulltula. The fear factor spikes up here for all the arachnophobes, as the mere thought of having to deal with this in a bathroom in the middle of the night is not something that I want to be a part of. The Skulltula is an iconic enemy of the first dungeon, giving the player their first taste of an enemy with defensive capabilities. Its hard exoskeleton provides a respectable defensive score of 49, but its soft underbelly means it cannot go higher than half marks on this one. Its offensive capabilities are hindered by its lack of movement, and it exposes itself too often to pose any real danger. But it's still troublesome enough to catch you off guard if you let it. Seriously though, if you need help dealing with this in a real world situation, you're probably on your own with that. Now, I can't be the only one to think this, but Deku Scrubs are kinda cute. Once you get over the fact that they have those glowing red eyes, that would probably put the fear of the Kikiri in you if you stumbled upon it in a field late at night. In fact, they might just be the least scary enemy in the game, as reflected by their minimum fear factor score. Though adorable, they shouldn't be taken lightly, as their Deku Nuts pack a mean punch, and can be shot a considerable distance towards Link. That said, they are easy to defend against as well. Where the Deku Scrub really shines though is in its defensive stats, hiding in the ground to be completely impervious to damage to anyone trying to attack them. They're also pretty nimble too, being able to dance around if surprised by an attack from range and avoid capture. Thanks to their memorable tips and secrets, they nudge themselves higher up on the iconicism chart. Just remember guys, 23 is number 1. Oh, I forgot to mention, if you've made it this far in the video, feel free to drop a comment on what you would have scored the various critters we've seen so far, and whether you agree with the current scores. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Consider dropping the video a like and subscribe too if you're enjoying the content. It really helps me out and lets more people discover the wonderful world that is The Legend of Zelda. Anyways, let's get back to the ratings. Gohma Larvae. Truth time. These little bugs gave me anxiety for the longest time when I was a kid. I remember I would always hug the edges of the wall of the Deku Tree whenever I entered the room that these were in, as the first time I stumbled upon them, I had zero clue that they were on the ceiling. I was mortified when they suddenly appeared in front of me and started swinging my sword in a blind panic. So yeah, they score a solid 49 on the fear factor scale for me. Their combat strategy is pretty basic, yet effective, charging down their foes to dish out the pain, while also leaving themselves exposed to the counterattack. In numbers, they can be a problem, so it might be best to deal with them in their egg form before they hatch, just in order to save yourself a headache later down the line. They are overshadowed by a later monster, but definitely play their part in making life difficult for our hero. Treat them with caution, lest a small problem becomes a much larger issue. Queen Gohma. Here we have our very first boss of the game, and a rare top trump card. The fear factor on this one is through the roof. The design, the ambience, the eerie rustling sound of something crawling around on the ceiling. Pure nightmare fuel. Personally, this was my very first core memory of The Legend of Zelda, and I will never forget how quickly my brother left the room when this monstrosity appeared, and I was left to pick up the controller and fight for my life. While understandably not as strong as later bosses in the game, Queen Gohma is, in many ways, the perfect introductory boss of the series. She boasts strong attacks, solid defences, and a necessary strategy to conquer, resulting in her scoring highly in all 3 battle categories. She has a lot of tricks up her sleeve too, primarily the know-how to read a situation and retreat to the safety of the ceiling while raining down her offspring from above, while Link races to destroy the eggs before they can hatch. All in all, the battle offers the complete package, and, as I'm sure many of you will agree, will be fondly, or not so fondly, remembered for each generation to come. Having finally made your way out of Kikiri Forest, the world becomes your oyster as you take your first steps into Hyrule Field. And the very next entity you meet is... this. Is it a pineapple? Is it an enemy? Who can tell? So you approach it, and suddenly this behemoth jumps out of the soil and starts spinning towards you. Well, it definitely has the surprise factor. Its design is actually quite horrific too, with infinite eyes locked upon you and a constant rotating death blade at its base. It scores highly on both the fear factor and the offense stat line. Its defense is impressive too, being completely immune to sword attacks while rooted in the ground at night, and spitting out its offspring if Link attempts to hit it. Once you're over the initial shock of this though, Its blades can be avoided easily enough for young Link to sneak through its defense and attack its vulnerable base, making it ultimately not too problematic to deal with. Maybe it's just looking for SpongeBob. While some players might find the Peahat visually scary, its offspring assault on a different sense entirely. Many of you will recognise the flying Peahat in the distance, flying from dawn till dusk for no apparent reason. Some might even be curious enough to venture closer to the airborne fruit. And that's when the whirring begins. The unrelenting, constant whirring of teeny tiny blades, honing in on your location, no matter where you choose to run. It's kind of like the movie Jaws, except the shark is in the sky. And there are 3 of him. These are the Peahat larvae, which airborne Peahats fire at Link should he be within range of their detection. And they will follow him until they hit the ground or are taken out. Thankfully, they are easy enough to dispatch with a shield block or a sword slash, but often they are close enough to make timing such actions somewhat difficult to pull off, if not handled in good time. We've all been there, frantically rolling across Hyrule Field trying to make it to the town before the sun sets. As the sky turns amber, your heart begins to sink as you hear the mournful cry of Malon in the air as the drawbridge rises up before your very eyes, and then they appear. Wave upon wave of endless Stalchildren, creepily approaching your position as Link lives out your worst zombie fears. Okay, so they aren't actually that tough, with relatively slow and weak attacks which can be easily dodged or blocked, and they can be taken down with just a couple of sword slashes. But boy, are they relentless. Link can literally be fighting through the night during his first night in Hyrule Field, as only the morning sun appearing over the hills can put an end to the ceaseless spawning, helping to explain the slightly higher tactical score. The first night is usually the worst though, as once the player gains access to the Sun Song, you can almost entirely avoid them if you want to. As an alternative, the Bunny Hood also prevents them from spawning, if you want to do some late night Skulltula hunting. Ah yes, the humble cuckoo. Arguably one of the franchise's most iconic creatures. The cuckoo is a staple of many games in the series, often providing Link a number of aerial boons as he triumphantly holds it above his head, and proceeds to fly over to distant ledges. They can be used to reach a whole variety of secrets and far-off places to help adventurers to progress. Their offensive and defensive capabilities are pretty low, reflected in some slightly lower scoring, but they are lifted by the cuckoo's ability to sense danger and run off in the opposite direction of Link if it feels aggrieved by any overly aggressive handling. Its fear factor is among the lowest in the deck, thanks to its cute sound effects and happy-go-lucky lifestyle. Though, a word of caution to this tale. Underneath this facade of cheeriness lies a monster waiting to be unleashed to prey upon the unwary. Nobody knows when, nobody knows why. All we know is, do not poke the chicken. You poked the chicken, didn't you? You went just that one sword swing too many in your quest to see how much you could bully that poor innocent cuckoo. Well, now you're going to suffer at the mercy of the whole flock. We've all experienced that battle cry at some point in our Zelda careers, that rallying little cock-a-doodle-doo, as your paltry assistant rains down the fury of its feathered friends, one after another. You cannot defeat them, you cannot outlast them. They are endless. No, really, this flock is actually invincible and take no damage from any of Link's attacks, scoring maximum marks on the defensive rating. They will also spawn endlessly until Link immediately vacates the area, which is no easy task, I can assure you. Each collision deals a full heart of damage, knocking Link to the ground. You can even get unlucky enough to be chained into attacks from inbound cuckoos until eventually you just game over. Fortunately, if you have a house nearby, you can weather the storm somewhat easily, as it counts as exiting the area, bringing down the cuckoo's irksome score. All in all, this is a truly powerful card. Just don't poke the chicken. Moving on from one winged critter to another, Keese similarly prefer strength in numbers, often being found in groups of 3 or 4 at a time. They can be heard flying around caves and dungeons in search for their next victim, but you'll want to be most on your guard when the flapping stops, as that means a stealth attack is heading your way. Being an aerial threat, they often hamper the hero in a number of different ways, proving to be a problem if not dealt with before attempting to solve puzzles. This boosts their irksome rating somewhat. It's probably best to focus on them when first entering a room. Individually, their strength and defense is comparatively the lowest of all foes, being taken out by a single projectile in every instance. Their survivability cannot be understated though, being a constant presence of the series since the very start. It's tough to imagine a Zelda game without this little winged wonder. Gold Skulltula. Did you know that there are 100 of these enemies in the entire world of Hyrule? Arguably, they are the most common enemy in the entire land, but also incredibly rare. Now, these particular spiders do form the game's largest side quest, as the player needs to hunt them down to unlock various rewards to assist with their journey, and for that reason, they score pretty highly on the iconicism stat line. They also pack a whole heart's worth of damage if Link gets too close to them, which is honestly quite respectable for something that barely moves. That's right, they are completely immobile though, apart from being able to spin on the spot, and they make a lot of noise. Yeah, that defense score is going way down here. At least they do hide in some pretty unique spots, encouraging the player to really think outside the box on occasions, so that adds a fun layer of challenge to collect them all. Next up, it's the infamous Redead. With its bone-chilling screams, it strikes fear into even the most veteran of Zelda players, piercing the heart and freezing its prey on the spot. It moves slowly, but it doesn't need to move fast when you can't run away. The Redead scores highly in both the iconicism and fear factor categories for these reasons, as it poses a threat during both the child and adult sequences of the game, and even earns its spot as the very last enemy that Link faces in Ganon's tower. It doesn't hit particularly hard, nor does it possess many invulnerabilities, resulting in a middling offense and defense stat. However, if one is foolish enough to let it get too close, they could be in for a world of hurt, as it gives them the last hug they might ever receive. A lesser known secret is that these creatures are actually drawn to sound, and can be entirely avoided if you walk quietly past them instead of running, giving a player a chance to handle them slightly better. I've lowered their irksome score to 57 with this in mind. Though that said, anyone who can walk slowly past these things has got nerves of steel. Everyone's favourite Ocarina of Time doggo, Wolfos. Just don't tell Richard. These wolf-like creatures almost exclusively come in pairs, making them troublesome to deal with. They are agile and move fast, constantly circling Link, waiting for their time to strike, while also possessing the ability to block frontal assaults and backflip to dodge attacks. Naturally, this gives them a pretty high defensive stat, however they fail to receive full marks thanks to their especially vulnerable hides, with a single sword slash to the rear, often enough to take them down in one hit. You probably wouldn't want to bump into these creatures on a dark night, with their glowing eyes watching you from the shadows, but with some clever strategies, our hero is more than equipped to dispatch these enemies without too much fuss. Plus, who can forget that How greeting when first entering the Forest Temple as an adult? It's just like getting home after a long day of work, except this pup might slightly want to eat you. We're clearly in the cute section now, as our next card is another adorable little animal type enemy, Baby Dodongo. These small dinosaurs are found solely in the aptly named Dodongo's cavern, often nestled close to the surface soil to launch surprise attacks on unsuspecting travellers. They are pretty weak defensively, being taken out by Child Link's sword swings in a single blow, but it is here that they reveal their trump card. Their innards are extremely volatile. Upon taking lethal damage, the baby Dodongo will begin glowing, and moments later engulf those surrounding it with a high-powered explosion. In large numbers, this can lead to some scary situations for the player. They are also particularly fond of rock-shaped objects, and will pounce on them at the earliest opportunity that they can. This can be used to distract and handle the dinos from a safe distance, while you stand back and watch the chaos unfold. Continuing with the animal theme here, we have the Fire Keese, a variant of the much beloved Keese family. Similar to its standard form, these bat-like enemies aren't much to look at defensively, often being handled from range with projectiles, however they come with additional potency on the attacking side. Capable of setting things aflame, to whatever they touch they inflict burn damage over time, and for added suffering, are even capable of setting wooden objects on fire. Some say you haven't played Ocarina of Time until you've seen a Fire Keese destroy your Deku Shield. Still, someone's got to keep the bizarre owner in Hyrule Market happy. Seriously though, if they catch you off guard, it can be really annoying to see your shield burn to a crisp, significantly lifting this foe's irksome rating. They are often found in the warmer places of Hyrule, so are easy enough to prepare for, but be sure to be wary if you hear those wing beats stop, to save yourself a couple of rupees later down the line. Though not quite as iconic as their vanilla cousins, a lot of players remember these foes for that one reason alone. I'm going to be real here. I love the business scrub, both in terms of design and as a concept. Defeating an enemy only to reveal he is an esteemed gentleman willing to do business with the victor to help them onwards with their journey. Is he scary? Not really, but what he lacks in terror and complexity, he more than makes up for with his charisma. In the randomised editions of Ocarina of Time, he also adds a fun alternative check to grant players key items for progression. He is in many ways a clone of the humble Deku Scrub, albeit without the ability to run away once a Deku Nut has been sent back his way, granting him similar offense and defense stat lines as his counterpart. He can be found in some slightly more obscure locations, such as grottos, but he sometimes has great deals on offer, which have been factored into his iconicism stat, as in my opinion, he is instantly recognisable amongst all Zelda fans, and even gets revamped versions in later games in the series. With scales harder than diamonds, or at the very least, whatever the Master Sword is made out of, Dodongos reign supreme defensively above the majority of enemies that Child Link will encounter. Gorons often use their scales in the creation of their heat-resistant tunics, as they are both sturdy and durable materials. Frontal assaults will almost always result in defeat against these scaly dinosaurs. They also boast a higher than average HP pool, and back this up with high firepower from both their flames and lethal tailspin attack, which hits over a fairly large range. Fortunately, they do take some time to inhale enough air to sustain a larger flame when attacking, and this can be capitalised by using some swift reactions to either throw a bomb in their gaping jaw, or to move behind them, allowing a quick attack to Dodongo's weaker posterior. Given their slower speed, they shouldn't pose too much of a problem with proper caution and preparation, but pose enough of a threat to keep the irksome score high. Their fear factor is also relatively middling, often because you find yourself on either the "Aw, dinosaurs" or "Ah, dinosaurs" coin.
Following on with the reptilian theme seen through the game's second dungeon, we have the second mini-boss, and a fan favourite across many games in the series, Lizalfos. Much unlike the other reptiles seen so far, these particular ones have the ability to stand on two legs, and see themselves able to wield a sword. Coupled with their agility, they are able to close down the distance between themselves and Link quickly when they need to, and dish out some decent damage too, reflecting in their higher offensive score. Their agility also raises their defense and irksome score too, being able to both leap over Link to dodge his attacks, and use their speed to tag out with their sparring partners partway through the battle. They will continuously run away from engagement until Link has done battle with their other comrade, further boosting their irksome score for those who might be in a hurry. The fear factor is on the low side, considering they look more like a cool lizard swordsman than a terrifying monster, plus with them having a tendency to retreat when threatened. Their highest stat goes to their iconicism, both due to the scenic lava rooms of Dodongo's cavern in which their duels take place, along with the clever tactics used in battle. Much like the Cuckoo, these scaly fiends are here to stay.
Probably second only to the most famous of dinosaurs, the T-Rex, we have the king of the Dodongos himself, King Dodongo. That name is kinda right on the nose, huh? Sporting nigh on impenetrable defences, this reptilian monarch has no weaknesses, on the outside at least. Immune to all sword slashes, hammer bashes, and even magic arrows, this dino is one tough nut to crack. Its size is rather intimidating as well, able to gobble up a traveller in a single gulp, and ability to give chase at speed by curling itself into a ball and rolling after its prey, boosting up its fear factor score quite nicely as a result. That, coupled with its abilities to quite literally set half the room on fire, makes for one mean combination. Thankfully, though it does hit twice as hard as your standard Dodongo, it suffers from the same primary weakness that its species is famous for: long, deep breaths, and a rather squishy interior. The name King Dodongo might seem unoriginal, but you'll never forget dropping in on this behemoth and seeing its name appear for the first time, whilst you prepare for the fight of your life. Going from one of the strongest defences to quite possibly one of the weakest, Shabomb. These are bubbles. Yep, just bubbles that bounce around aimlessly inside the belly of Jabu-Jabu. They can be broken by sword slashes, sticks, Deku Nuts, body contact, or even just sneezing loudly in the vicinity of one. They are not particularly scary either. In fact, it can be quite mesmerising just watching them bounce around the walls for hours as you slowly get digested by the body fluids you've somehow found yourself in. Whoa, better keep moving. Credit where credit is due, they can be slightly disruptive when performing tasks or fighting without Deku Nuts, as they expand upon contact and deal damage to Link if he gets too close. Not to mention the risk of getting the bubble spray blowing back into your eyes. Seriously, there's no other pain quite like that. Just ask Ralph Wiggum. Beery. Warning, do not touch without proper protective equipment. These jellyfish-type enemies pack a mean sting in their tentacles, and is able to carry electric currents through metallic objects like swords and shields. Though it doesn't necessarily provide extra protection, it does act as an effective deterrent, as adventurers who don't want any unexpected shocks need to look for alternative measures to defeat them. Their damage output isn't too much cause for concern, but in numbers, or with other enemies around, Beery can quickly outnumber and overwhelm Link if he doesn't focus on dealing with them at the start of combat, and in extreme cases, they could infinitely stunlock him into submission. It's a shame you don't see them in other parts of the game to provide some additional challenges, but nevertheless, they will always be remembered as those jellyfish things flying around the inside of his belly. Barry. Like Beery, but bigger, and harder hitting. Unlike Beery though, they are not as obviously lurking in rooms of Jabu-Jabu's belly. Instead, when an unsuspecting traveller draws too close, they will fall from the ceiling with a loud crash. Similar to their smaller cousins, they are shocking to the touch. However, they have an unexpected weakness to the Deku Nut, being able to be stunned and dispatched by a follow-up sword attack, all without the risk of being electrocuted in retaliation. This strategy proves especially effective when doing battle in a certain boss fight, eliminating multiple at once with a single nut. When defeating a Barry, it will split up into 3 Beery. I'm not sure if that makes Barry or Beery more annoying though.
Tail Passeran.
Okay, show of hands. Did you guys know this was this thing's name? I did not even realise this thing had a name when I was growing up. It was just fondly known as the Claw. Anyway, enough fame shaming. These floating worm-like creatures are made up of pure energy and will follow Link if he gets too close to them, having the annoying tendency to cause him to drop anything he is holding at the time as well. Aside from being mildly inconvenient, it is probably likely to get him in a lot of hot water with a certain royal princess. She'll be talking about this years down the line. They can actually be defeated with a sword slash, at the cost of taking some shock damage in retaliation. As a result, its attack and defense are balanced to reflect this give a little, take a little approach. On the fear factor front, they are a little bit creepy, and make you go, I should probably avoid touching that, as you walk past them at a slightly brisk pace. But not anything more than that. Parasitic Tentacle. Yep, it's a big old tentacle right in the middle of the ceiling. It just dangles there, lifeless. That is, until Link gets a little too close for comfort, and it lashes out at him with a mighty wallop. And this packs some serious power behind it, launching Link across a room. It isn't able to move much from its initial position, though it does pose the ability to retreat and hide itself away if it feels threatened, helping to improve its defensive rating. There is one glaring weakness in that it has a sensitive narrow section at the top of the tentacle, which is vulnerable to objects being thrown at it. Through the use of clever footwork and a strong left arm, Link is able to outmaneuver this limb, luring it into attack mode while throwing his boomerang to attack the weak spot, and dodging the swinging threat at the same time. Much like the overall interior of Jabu-Jabu's belly, this enemy isn't really all that fear factor inducing, but instead leans on the side of just being a little bit gross. Ever present in a number of different Legend of Zelda games, the Big Octo makes its appearance in the form of the mini-boss of Jabu-Jabu's belly. After apprehending Princess Ruto, this larger-than-average Octo leaps into combat with the hero, and attacks by attempting to ram into him with his considerable mass, all while spinning a spiky platform in the centre. It moves surprisingly fast, making it difficult to pursue while attempting to also stun it with a newly acquired boomerang. It has a single weakness that can only be exposed when stunned in this manner, giving this creature a higher than average defensive score. The player has to decide whether to chase after the Big Octo, throwing their boomerang in the hope that it reaches their foe before coming back to sender, all while avoiding the spinning spikes, or to face them head on with a well-timed throw before being charged down. They then have to run around and attack the back of the Octo before it breaks out of the stun. Thankfully, this process is somewhat simplified by the fact that the big Octo can be taken out by a single jump attack using a Deku Stick. Nevertheless, this can be a very frustrating mini-boss fight, and a good opportunity for Link to get his cardio in. Baronade. Scourge of Lord Jabu-Jabu's stomach, this parasitic creature has a whole host of weapons at its disposal. Whether it be shooting bolts of charged electricity towards our young hero, hurling Barry in a cyclic frenzy, or just simply running riot in a confined space, this boss monster keeps Link on his toes as he needs to deal with several threats all at once. As such, Baronade scores highly on both the offensive and irksome categories. Its defences are nothing to be scoffed at either, utilising Barry as a defensive armour to protect and ward off potential threats to its soft exterior, alongside coating itself in electrical energy, rendering conventional sword attacks useless without stunning Baronade first. From a terror perspective, you'd definitely feel intimidated being sealed in a chamber with this thing, though it'd probably be more of a grossed out feeling than actual true fear. Nevertheless, it definitely exudes danger with the static air that surrounds it, and is of considerable size, especially compared to a child. I'd say it does score less for being memorable compared to the other Child Link bosses, in part due to being outshone by the true boss of this dungeon, Ruto, and her scathing criticisms of Link abandoning her. Now that's scary. And there we have it, folks. 29 individually wrapped and packaged Ocarina of Time enemies ready to do battle with one another on the glorious battle format that is Top Trumps. This is only the beginning though, as next time we investigate 29 new enemies as part of our Temple of Time deck, exploring the strengths and weaknesses of Link's foes, as we take a look at the early adult years of his path and journey to becoming the famous hero of Hyrule. Let me know which enemy you're most looking forward to seeing, and maybe they'll make an appearance next time. Remember to leave a like and subscribe if you want to stay tuned for more content like this, and I will see you all in the next video.